In this video, we're going to look at the update operations in MongoDB. So there's two different update operations that we'll have a look at in Mongo. One is update one for updating a single document. And then like with insert, we've got insert one and insert many. We also have an update many that is used for updating multiple documents. The basic structure of the update operation is as you see here. So DB and then the collection name that we're performing the update on. Then we'll have update one or update many if we're planning on updating more than one document. And then there's three parts that we'll specify within these brackets here. So the first one is a filter. We're trying to match some document to choose which ones we're going to do the update on. Next is the update itself, so what value we're setting and what we're setting it to. And lastly, there's some other options as well that we can set, and we'll talk about those as we go through. So you might remember in our grades collection that the documents are structured like this. So we've documents with object IDs, each one has a student ID and a class ID, an array of scores, and each score is another document with a type and a score within it. Okay, so we'll be, in this example here, doing an update on one of those documents. So in this case, we are the filter part, which is this first part here in this first set of curly brackets. The filter is matching this object ID. So it's going to look for a document with this specific object ID and then update that. The second part then is the update itself. So in here we'll have a set operator and then the value that we want to change. So this is going to change the class ID to 10 in this document. And that's an example of an update one where it's just going to update one document. Okay, we can also set multiple values at the same time in that set operation. So as you see here, this one is updating the class ID and the score as well. So changing the class ID to 19 and changing one of the scores to 15. And just to show you here, when we have a document like our documents where there's multiple kind of different levels within it, how we're working with that is saying the scores element first, then scores.0 would be the first element in the scores array, and then .score gets the score property within that. Just going to go back to the previous slide where that was here. So again, you can imagine it as kind of drilling down through our document structure. So it's going to go into this scores property first, into the first array element, which will be this document here, and then into the score property within that document. So it would be setting this value here to 15. Okay, and like I said, then we can also update many documents. So if we want to update many, we use the update many method instead. And it's really the same within the brackets. The main difference, I suppose, is that you have here update many instead of update one. You still have the two parts, the filter, which matches a particular criteria. So in this case, we're looking for student IDs of 5. And then the set part, again, the syntax is kind of the same, but the behavior is different. So in this case, it's going to set all student IDs. Wherever it finds a student with number 5, it'll set them all to 50. And you can try that one out yourself in the labs. I think there's 7 students that match that criteria. So the update many operation would change all of them. If we did the same thing with update one, it would just, even if there's many different matches found, it would just update the first one that it finds. Okay. Then I mentioned that there's some other options that we can set. So the options are a kind of an additional and optional, you may have guessed from the word option, thing that we can add into our updates. So one of the options we can set is upsert. And upsert, the word is a portmanteau of update and insert. So, you can sort of probably guess the behavior from that. What it will do is it will update the document if it does exist, or if it doesn't find it, then it will insert the document instead. Okay, so this update here, this, again, you'll be trying this out in the labs yourselves. This update is on a document that doesn't actually exist. So if we didn't put this upsert true part in here, we just get an error back saying that that document doesn't exist, and it couldn't do the update because it didn't find the correct document. But if we have upsert set to true, then what it will do is it'll search for this document, and if it finds it, it will do the update with all the information that you see here. And if it doesn't find it, it will create a document with this information instead. Okay, so this is another area where you see the kind of flexibility of Mongo versus maybe some other databases where you'd have to insert a document or a record or whatever first before you'd be able to update it. Okay, but with Mongo you can kind of do a 2-in-1 with that. Okay, so next then, there's a number of other options that we have for updating arrays or parts of arrays. Okay, so consider this collection here called example 1, and in the labs yourselves you can use this insert many command to create this example collection and try these options out for yourselves. But yeah, so this collection has 3 documents, and as you can see there's an array of scores here as well for each one. Okay, so there's a number of different operators that we can use in Mongo to update those documents. Some of these are a little bit similar to commands that you might have seen in JavaScript. So pop, for example, you've possibly anyway used that to work with arrays in JavaScript, maybe when you did web development. And in JavaScript you can do things like pop and push, and there's shift and unshift as well. So very similar, and then work in almost the same way as they do in regular JavaScript. Pop is a little bit different. I think in JavaScript you use either pop to add to remove from the end of the array. I always get these back to front. Pop to remove from the end of the array, and I think unshift to remove from the start of the array or something like that. But in this case you use pop for both of those scenarios. So if you want to remove something from the start or the end, you can use pop for both of those. You will just specify a -1 if you want to remove the first array element, and a 1 if you want to remove the last array element. So in this example here, you can see we're matching the document, so we're targeting that first document in our collection, and then we're using pop with score set to -1, so that will remove the first array element here. Okay, and as you can see, that's gone. And if I was to set score to 1, it'll remove the last element instead, so it would have removed the 3 in that case. The push operator is used to add elements to an array, and I think again that's quite similar to the way it works in JavaScript, and it always in this case adds it to the end of the array. So again here we're targeting that first document, and we're adding the score 1 to the end of that array, and this will be the result here. The pull operator then can remove values from an array based on some criteria. Here you can see for the filter part of this update, we've just used square brackets, or sorry, curly brackets, empty curly brackets. So what this will do is find all the documents. So yeah, so if you ever just want to get all the documents in a collection and do an update on all of them, you can put in empty curly brackets for the filter. And next then we use the pull to remove all scores of 1, and that will remove any ones that it finds in any of the documents. So I'm not sure at that stage would there be, I think at this point there would have been 1 in the first document and 1 in the second document. So as you can see there, it removes both of those. Okay. And the add to set operator then adds a value to the array. And again, it will add it to all documents in the array if we set this here to be an empty set of curly brackets. Okay, and it will, a little bit different, I suppose, to pull. Pull will just remove them all. Add to set will add, but only if the value that you're adding doesn't already exist. So just to go back again to our previous set of documents, you can see we already have a 5 here in this second document, and we've got 2 5s in the third document. So this add to set will just add a 5 to that first document. Okay, if there's already a 5 in there, it just doesn't do anything with those. Okay, and then updating arrays using array filters. We came across array filters in the find operation when we talked about that. So it's a similar idea here. Array filters searches through elements in an array and then performs some operation on all of those. So in this case, we are looking at this example collection, and what we want to do is to get anywhere that there's a grade of more than 100. So this grade here and this one here, and actually, yeah, that's it, just those two. And we want to set those to 100 so that's the max grade that you can get. So to do this, here we have 3 parts to our update. So the first 2, kind of same as before, we have our filter, which is going to match any grades documents where there's a grade of more than 100. So what that would do is really just filter out this first document. Okay, so now it's going to only have to kind of search through these 2 where we know at least one of the values is greater than 100. Okay, next then it's going to set the grades dot element, and this part here is the filter. So this is going to filter and get only grades elements, only set only the relevant grades elements to 100. Okay, and the options part then includes our array filter. So here we're searching for any elements that are greater than or equal to 100. And the difference, I suppose, between this part and this part is that this part here, this filter, matches whole documents. So this would return this second document and this third document. But the array filter is more specific in that it goes through and it will find that this one's not greater than 100, this one is not greater than or equal to, it's not greater than 100, and this one is greater than 100. So it's going to pick out the specific element of the grades array rather than the whole document. Okay. So once we know then which elements are the ones that are greater than or equal to 100, it's going to then set those values to be just 100. I realize there now actually it does say greater than or equal to. Yeah, greater than would just work as well, because obviously some of them were already just exactly 100. Okay, so again, you can try that out yourselves in the lab. And our final example here then is a collection that has a structure, I suppose, more similar to the other grades collection that we've been working with, in that it has an array, but within that array then there's sub-documents. And each of those has a grade and a mean and a STD, a standard variation, I think that is as well. Okay. So to access elements within the array, we would use syntax kind of something like this. So the first part here is an empty filter, so that's going to return all the documents. Our array filter this time is accessing the grade within the element. So again, let's say it's the first array element. It's going to that would be this document here. This is going to get this specific grade property out of this document. Okay, and it's going to look for grades that are greater than or equal to 85, and then set those to set the mean value of those to 100. So what that means is anywhere here that we've got this 85 or greater, so these two documents and these documents as well, it's going to set the mean for all of those ones to 100. Okay, but it's useful to know here how you can drill down into your different documents, because with our grades collection we have a kind of a similar structure. We've got in our case, I guess we've got scores, and then we'll have an element filter to get a specific score within the scores array. And then instead of mean, we have, I think each one is type and score. Okay, so in our case, it might be scores.element.score. Okay. And lastly then, there's also an update method. Similar to the way with insert one and insert many, there's another method that you can use called insert. And the same here, there's a method called update. The update method can be used to update one document or many documents. So it's quite useful in that way. The default is that it will just update one document, but you can use a multi-option with it to update multiple documents. But the reason we're not looking at that one is it's deprecated in major drivers. So if you were using Mongo with a Node web application, the update method wouldn't work, but it does still work in the Mongo shell. And I just wanted to make you aware of it because you possibly come across it in the documentation at some stage. But in the lab anyway, I've stuck to just using update one and update many.